Hey y'all, welcome back. We just finished talking about point of view. We did an activity where we looked at some movie clips and determined the point of view, and then we previewed the text for today. Remember, we're reading a text called The Giant Lumberjack. Our goal here, what we're trying to accomplish is one, we're going to read through the text. And we're going to fill out a story organizer. So you're going to listen to Mrs. Lardner read through the text and fill out part of my story organizer. Then, as we're filling out our story organizer, we're going to be thinking a lot about the point of view. What is the point of view in this story? After I've read a little bit, you're then going to read the rest of the text and fill out your graphic organizer on your own. So like I told you in the last video, it's really important that you have this new nifty thing. Like, I don't know if you've heard of it or not before, but it's called a pencil. So make sure you have a pencil. And then that other thing that you need, kind of crazy, but you're going to need some paper. So while I'm filling out my organizer on the computer, you are filling out your organizer on pencil and paper. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to be reading a text called The Giant Lumberjack. Remember, you're listening to Mrs. Lardner read through the text and think through how I would annotate it using my STORY or my story organizer. Here we go. The Giant Lumberjack. There are many tales about the mighty Paul Bunyan and his larger-than-life adventures in early America. Paul could do things that other human beings could not do. Here's how it all began. Oh, I remember that after I read every paragraph, I need to stop and I need to think, is there anything that I could fill out in my organizer? Setting. Do I know where this story is taking place? Not really. It's still pretty broad. It says like early America. That's like not specific enough for me to put a setting. But what about a talking character? Oh, I am being introduced to this cool guy, it seems like. His name is Paul Bunyan. I'm going to highlight Paul Bunyan orange because in my graphic organizer, talking characters are orange. Then I need to really think through what is the point of view that this story is being told. Because whenever I think about a character, I need to think about their point of view. So when I look back and I think about point of view, I remember that first person point of view is when we're seeing the person who's telling the story is a character in the story, and they were there, they were living through it, they were doing it. We'll see a lot of words like I or we or us. Not really seeing I or we or us so far. So what was third point of view, third person point of view? That again was when we were thinking that it's somebody from the outside, a narrator that's not a character in the story that's telling us what's happening. We'll see words like he, she, or maybe even the character's actual name. So let's go back and reread. There are many tales about the mighty Paul Bunyan and his larger-than-life adventures in early America. Paul could do things. It sounds like this might be third person point of view. I'm talking about Paul, but I'm talking about him and his character name. So it seems like I'm an observer from the outside. So let's make sure that's filled in. So Paul Bunyan is my character here. This is third person point of view. I haven't really figured out a character trait or motivation yet. Definitely haven't figured out a problem. It's only the first paragraph, no attempts to resolve and no lesson learned. So let's keep reading. As one story goes, Paul Bunyan was born years ago in Bangor, Maine. Ah, yes, it was quite an event. A whole flock of storks delivered big baby Paul to his parents. He yelled so loud that he scared all the fish out of the rivers. Why, when Paul was 3 months old, he weighed 80 pounds. His baby carriage was a wagon pulled by a team of horses, and he even fit into some of his father's clothes. People could see him growing right before their eyes, and that was just the beginning. Well, I want you to think for a second, if you had a baby that was born 3 months ago, if they would be able to fit into their dad's clothing. No way. That means this kid, Paul Bunyan, was super big. Let's see if we've learned anything that we can fill out in our organizer. Have I learned about the setting? Well, yeah, it says that he was born in Bangor, Maine. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. And I'm going to highlight that with my red highlighter because my S was red. So I'm also going to add that this story seems to be taking place in Bangor, Maine. What about T, talking characters? Well, I learned that like Paul weighed 80 pounds when he was little. Sounds kind of like he might be a little humongous, gigantic, like pretty big. So I'm going to add that to my talking characters. Paul Bunyan character trait, he is humongous. Man, he's so big. Let's see if there's anything else. His baby, no problem. It doesn't seem like no attempts to resolve, no lesson learned yet. So let's keep reading. Paul was such a gigantic baby that his parents could hardly find enough food to feed him. People say that it took a whole herd of cows to keep his bottle full of milk. He used wagon wheels for buttons. I'm going to stop. Have I learned anything new about the setting? Nope. Have I learned anything new about my talking characters? Well, I have another clue here that he was humongous. I am going to highlight that. I already have written it in my organizer, though. What about a problem? Well, his parents could hardly find enough food to feed him. I'm going to highlight that in yellow. That is a problem. So I'm going to go back into my graphic organizer and I'm going to fill that out. Does that sound like something that he's feeling? No, it doesn't seem like an internal conflict. It seems like an external conflict. So the conflict that I'm seeing here is that Paul's parents want to feed him, but they can't because he is so big. Whew. Just a reminder, your organizer looks just like mine. If I'm going too fast, you can pause and you can write it down. So they want to feed him, but they can't because he's so big. Let's go back and see if there's anything else. People say it took a whole herd of cows to keep his bottle full of milk. I want you to stop for a second. I want you to think, is there anything else in this paragraph that we can add to our organizer? Think about it. What do you think? An attempts to resolve? Yeah, I think so too. It took a whole herd of cows to keep his bottle full of milk. I'm going to highlight that green. That was one of my attempts to resolve. So let's see. Maybe I can fill it out here. So I'm going to actually just type it out. Ooh. Anytime. So his parents use a whole herd. Oops. My problem went away. Oh no. Parents use a whole herd of cows to help feed Paul. This makes the conflict better because they could feed Paul. I know I've written it in my organizer, I've highlighted it. Great. Seems like we're ready to go on to the fourth paragraph. Now, Paul loved to sleep outside. During a nap one day, he flattened 4 miles of forest. Paul was as big as 10 football fields. His parents were at their wits' end, so they built him a raft, and Paul floated off to the coast of Maine. Suddenly, while Paul was still asleep, he rolled over, which caused a 75-foot tidal wave. The British Navy arrived and fired cannons for 7 hours to wake up Paul. Finally, Paul woke up, jumped off the raft, and sank 4 warships. Then Paul did his first good deed. He scooped up all the soldiers before they drowned. Whew! Man, a lot of fun adventure things happened in this paragraph. Let's break it down a little bit. Did anything about my setting change? Well, he floated to the coast of Maine. He's still in Maine. I'm not going to change my setting. Talking characters. Did I learn anything else about Paul? Well, I learned here that he did his first good deed. He helped all of these sailors who were getting ready to drown. So the other thing that I'm thinking about Paul is that he's kind of helpful, he's thoughtful, and he's caring. All of these things help us understand what Paul did or a trait that Paul might have that describe his personality. No character motivation yet. I don't see anything that Paul wants, but I do think that we were introduced to another problem. What I'm thinking here is that He was flattening miles of forest. That seems to be a pretty big problem. We don't want to flatten forests. Those are important for people to be able to live and to survive. It also seems like his parents were a little upset or a little frustrated about all of like the chaos that Paul was bringing. So they built him a raft and he floated off the coast of Maine. That to me seems like an attempt to resolve. They were trying to help Paul sleep by building him a raft so that he wouldn't flatten any more forests. But when he was asleep, he rolled over and that caused a huge tidal wave. When he did that, they then had the British Navy come to try to wake him up. And when they woke him up, he jumped off the raft and he sank 4 warships. A lot of problems and a lot of attempts to resolve here. So what I need to go ahead and do now is go back into my graphic organizer and fill this out. So another conflict that I'm seeing here is that Paul really wants to take a nap, but he can't because he's destroying the forest. What did we say his parents did? Well, his parents tried to build him that raft to send him away. Did it make the conflict better or worse? Well, we learned that it made the conflict worse because he sank 4 of those boats from the Navy. I was also introduced to another story or another problem. He wants to take a nap, but he can't because when he rolls over, he's creating that really big tidal wave. Well, what was the solution? They tried to build him a raft and it made the conflict worse because he did sink those 4 warships. So I can use that same attempts to resolve for both of these conflicts. Am I missing any other ones? Nope. Okay, got them both, got the character traits. So let's look at our organizer now. We've got our setting, our talking characters, our problem, and some attempts to resolve. So far, I have not learned any lesson, and these are the only conflicts that I found, but I know that the story is not over. Remember though, Mrs. Lardner told you that I was only going to read paragraphs 1 through 4. Now your job is to read paragraphs 5, 6, 7, and 8. And as you're reading, you're going to add to the story organizer that we have already created. So down below in your Google form, you're going to see the text here. I'm actually going to read it to you here so you can hear Mrs. Lardner read, but I'm going to post it in the form so that you can go back and you can look at it. So now you're just going to listen to me read the rest of the story. And as I'm reading, you're filling out the rest of your story organizer. I'm not going to do any thinking here. I'm just reading. You're doing the thinking. After you've listened to me read, you've filled out your organizer, then you're going to answer some of the questions below, and then I'll see you on the next form. But let me go ahead and finish reading the text to you. All right, remember, I'm just reading, you're doing the thinking. After all this, the eastern part of the United States was too small for Paul, so the family moved to Minnesota. One day, Paul dug Lake Michigan so his new friend, Babe the Blue Ox, could have a drink of water. Paul and Babe made a good team. The loggers told many stories about Paul and Babe. They could cut down acres of trees in just a few minutes, and that's not all. One winter, it was 68 degrees below zero. It was so cold that the flames in the lantern froze. Come spring, the lumberjacks forgot about the lanterns. The lanterns flared up. Then the lanterns set all of northern Michigan on fire. Guess who they woke up to stamp out the fire with his boots? Yep, it was Paul Bunyan. No matter who told the story, Paul was known as the giant lumberjack. Paul roamed Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, South Dakota, and many other parts of the United States. Paul was so famous that to this day, many of these states claim to be Paul Bunyan's birthplace and have built statues to remember his help in building early America. Paul solved problems everywhere he went. He helped people one by one. Why, I heard a tale that he even had a hand in making the Grand Canyon and Puget Sound. but that's another story. Awesome job, scholars. Give yourself an air high five. Shh. We just finished reading the text. Now your job, fill out your story organizer for the rest of these paragraphs you're adding on to what we wrote, and then answer the questions below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.